1. I live in an apartment block in Europe with about 100 apartments in total. Every year we have an election for what could be compared to an American homeowners association, where we elect a president and a couple of board members to manage the general expenses and daily maintenance tasks, fixing garage port, cleaning common areas, security cameras. We do have a rule book of sorts. Nobody in the board has ever been too bothered by neighbors going their own way, as long as there is no complaints. I am the president of this homeowners association as of today, and I've had my fair share of interesting neighbors. But this one takes the cake. He bought a fancy Tesla, which he made an effort to flash around the neighbors, kind of condescending on how useless old cars are, how we live in the past. Thing is, we don't have a charging station in the garage, so he has to go to the gas station to fill up the battery. There was no charger when he came in, so that shouldn't come as a surprise here. But as soon as he got the car, he started pestering the board, asking about the EV charger. We need to keep up with modern times, you know. We repeatedly answered that it is in our plans and we would love to get him on board to help us, as he was the main interested person for the task. This should make the process much more efficient. He never responded to the invitation to join and help. There is even a small payment for the board members. And we are slammed with other higher priority tasks that have suddenly popped up. Fire alarm upgrades, changing parts of the sprinklers. So we really cannot use much time in EV charging, although we all agree that we have to get that going. Suddenly, I got a phone call from an electrician reading from the law that we cannot deny an EV charger in the garage, and that he would come the following week at our earliest convenience. I just asked him for some time to read the law and make sure we were on the same page. And in the conversation, he slipped the name of the person who had ordered the charger. To no surprise, it was the Tesla man. There are others with EVs in the garage, and we have a fluent communication with them about this matter. They prefer to wait to work on the case, which is fine by me. So I read all the laws and our internal regulations to make sure that we were following everything to the letter. It turns out that the law forces a homeowners association to facilitate the infrastructure for EV charging, not the stations themselves, as long as there is not a force majeure reason against it, like economical reasons. And our internal regulations state that charging essential infrastructure of the building needs to be done under the approval of the General Assembly, which happens once a year. I talked to our finance manager, and he argued strongly against such an expense without getting a loan to partly finance it, as it would destabilize the economy of the community. With all that, we decided to comply with the regulations fully. 1. We won't decide on any structural changes on the building until the next General Assembly. 2. We need a person dedicated to following the steps of finding providers, comparing offers, and presenting them first to the board, and then to the rest of the neighbors. This also includes safety measures for the upgraded infrastructure. 3. Once we have a budget, we will find bank offers for the loan that we will have to take, most likely. 4. We need to hire a lawyer to update the rulebook to account for the use of chargers in the garage. As steps 1 and 3 are dependent on general assemblies, the process will inevitably be prolonged in time, and we know that neighbors are generally against taking up a loan that will increase their monthly costs. So he will have to fight an uphill battle for being a pain in the butt. The best part is that before all this happened, we were considering setting a temporary charging station for everyone, instead of the ideal solution of everyone being free to set their charger on their spot. That would not require a loan, and was planned to be done during 2022. Now we will have to ask the Assembly if that's an interesting way forward and abide by the response. I feel bad for the EV owners because when the Tesla guy invoked the rules, the game changed, and now they have to wait for the official process instead of having a temporary, just A-OK solution, while we got the rest in place. 2. For context, since I, male 28, was 11, my parents have been divorced. My mother, 64, got custody, and we would see our father one weekend every 2 weeks. I also have a little sister, 25, so I ended up being the only man in the house. Growing up, our mother always taught us that we needed to participate in house duties, such as washing the dishes, taking out the laundry, preparing food. We would take turns, and during the week, Us children would take care of all of that, because our mother would come back from work exhausted and expect to not have to do anything once at home, and we were kind of okay with that. Only that as young children we would often, forget to do stuff and it would cause a fight. But we ended up learning to not forget. Only there are some tasks that wouldn't be fairly distributed. My mother always needed a man close so that she could give him some work to do. And even though she never remarried and only dated 1 or 2 men after she divorced, she always found some male friend or some friend's husband or boyfriend to whom she could ask for help. Until at some point people started to realize that she was being close to them for the only purpose that she could ask them for help. Where if she does something for you, you have to give back something equivalent or you disappear from her life. So basically she lost a few friends. But at some point I was old enough to be useful, and she started asking me for help in those matters. OP, the internet box doesn't work anymore, can you look it up? It needs a man's brain to understand that. OP, I bought some furniture from IKEA, can you build it for me? It needs a man's brain to understand that. OP, can you carry luggage? Only a strong man can do that. OP, can you look up why my computer is being so slow? It needs a man's brain to understand that, and so on. I asked repeatedly that she look at how I dealt with these things so that she could understand herself and fix it alone next time. Especially when it was something basic as a restart to the internet box. But she didn't want to learn. She just wanted me to do it because she didn't want to have to deal with it herself. And it went on for a few years, growing from just restarting the box into piercing into walls so that she could hang mirrors and stuff. For info, I never did anything like that at all before she asked me to do it, so I guess it made me learn, which is a good thing. So what bothered me was that she just didn't care and expected me to do all because it was normal, and me knowing about it was not a question. I'm a man, so it's my job. And as I was growing up, and her still not learning anything, I got more and more frustrated. Until this one final time, I don't remember what specific task it was, where she told me that it's a man's job, needing a man's brain. I had a huge sigh, did the job, then went back to my business. Cue the malicious compliance. As some tasks require a man's brain, it is obvious that some others require a woman's touch. As we men are all about technique, big thinking, and strength work, so the following days, I started to wash the dishes and then put them back anywhere in the kitchen. Because, us men have no idea about where goes what in a house. We just fix things and carry heavy stuff. I forgot to get food back in the fridge because, that's already cooked, it won't spoil. I overcooked my steaks, eggs, pizza because, I was so busy thinking about all that technical stuff and I didn't have the brain space to think about checking food. Ha! Laundry would be spread to dry, one piece onto another, because it's more efficient and it saves space. And about cleaning the house, let's just say it was a waste of time because I could perfectly live in my own mess. Of course, it didn't take long for my mother to get angry at me for not taking care of the house, or for doing it so stupidly, to which I answered, sorry, it needs a woman's brain to understand how to take care of a house correctly. Which, yes, is totally sexist. But so is saying that all the work she made for me to do was men only. So at first she was dumbfounded, then the storm unleashed. It's still one of the biggest fights we've had to this day. Things calmed down, and I went back to caring properly, until she asked for my man's brain again. From this point I stopped caring. I would forget the laundry in the washing machine, let the dishes pile up in the sink, and would only do my man's jobs. She would still get really angry ordering me to do stuff, which I would ultimately do, completely half-assed. Meaning that she had to do it all over after me because half the dishes were just out in the kitchen, not in their place, laundry was all stuck together to dry, and so on. Mood in the house was tense, and it wouldn't need much for a fight to blow up. Until at some point, she asked me to help her do this or that, not to do it for her anymore, so I helped. I showed her how to do it. I took time for it. We did it together multiple times. Until she finally learned how to do it. I then started taking care of my duties as I did before, and things went back to normal. Finally. 3. This happened within the past 2 years. I am an independent contractor in a creative and artistic field. I run my own business, and have for over a decade now. 8 years ago, a friend recommended me to someone who basically does what I do, but also hires out other creatives to his clients. Let's call him Kevin. I submitted a sample of my work and he put me in his database. I landed a job through him for a very, very large corporation, a very well-known client company. Of course, I was super thankful. I went on my first few jobs, which took place at the big company's local offices. It was fun. They were great. Kevin was the one who would submit the invoice. Big company paid him, then he paid me. However, I immediately noticed that I was getting paid like 3, 4, and sometimes 5 months later. I would inquire to Kevin, and he blamed the big company. I took his word for it, but it was really annoying and it disrupted cash flow for me quite a bit. I couldn't say anything to the big company because technically they weren't my client. They were his client, and it's unprofessional. After a few sessions, he stopped arranging the schedule, and left that to be between myself and the big company. Fine, no biggie. Actually easier that way. I knew he was being paid for each of my sessions. I made $100 per working hour. I assumed he made maybe like 25 or 50, considering he wasn't even coordinating the sessions, and literally didn't even know when they were occurring. He literally did nothing but invoice them. I'd send him session sheets afterwards so he can send invoices. He hardly ever responded. In order to get paid, I'd have to email him several times. It took up to 5 months to send me a check sometimes. One time I threatened to not send sessions anymore because things were getting so bad. He promptly replied and paid me. I dealt with this for years. One day, someone from the big company forwarded me an email chain that had some info on it that I wasn't supposed to see. I found out that for every 1 hour I worked, Kevin made $200 and I made $100. This pissed me off so bad. Here I was doing all the work, even coordinating the sessions, and he was literally contributing nothing other than to sit back and not pay me on time. I found out many times that company actually did pay him, and he would delay sending me my cut by months. Fast forward to the pandemic. In 2020, I could no longer get into big company because of lockdowns. I could still work for them, but like everyone else, I had to work from home, and we'd use Zoom. But this meant I had to use my own studio as well as my very own expensive equipment. This is what I do with most clients, and I usually charge more. So I reached out to Kevin and asked him if I could at least get paid $150 per hour instead of $100, considering I was now using my own resources, which are expensive. He replied that it just isn't in the budget, sorry. He didn't know that I knew he was making $200 for every $100 I made, while he didn't do a damn thing except pay me late. And now I'm using my resources. He always spoke to me like I was some little kid, like I'm getting paid to mow his lawn or something, very patronizing. Like I'm a Girl Scout, selling cookies. I don't know, it was weird. Next Zoom session with my client, project manager Scott and I have a discussion about Kevin. I tell him the issues I've had. I never spoke with this client about the issues before, because it's unprofessional to speak with the end client about money matters, but this had gone too far. They said they'd received similar complaints from other creatives. They offered me a direct contract. We negotiated, and I asked for $200 an hour. This saved them $100, and I made $100 more. Remember that they were originally paying $300 an hour, $100 for me, $200 to worthless Kevin. It was a win-win. Since Kevin never had me sign a contract, there were no legal issues in doing this. We didn't tell Kevin, and I officially began working directly with them. Every single creative followed suit. Kevin thought they just didn't have work coming in. Kevin lost the contract with this enormous company. When he came in to pick up some things at big company, he saw my name on a session sheet. He was like, "You have a collaborative project meeting with them today? You didn't tell me." They broke the news to him and told him all of his creative partners are now working directly with the company. I asked Scott what Kevin's reaction was. He said he just stood there with a very confused, shocked look on his face. There was an awkward 10-second silence, and then he just walked out. In the meantime, I was making more money. I get paid on time. Imagine that. And my workload was increased. I had my biggest year financially in 2021. 4. Now the story starts 2 or 3 months ago. I had not long found out I was pregnant, and I was beginning to feel very sick. Morning sickness is not strictly morning, my friends. Oh no, not at all. I couldn't work for a few weeks because my coworker, who is a shit in her own right, and not really relevant to this story, would send me home every time I looked peaky. She's up my boss's ass, so is given permission to make these decisions. Eventually, I was allowed to work from home. Everything started getting better. Office politics aside, I was working, and while exhausted, I was happy. Now, it's worth noting here I'm legally disabled. I have a health condition that I will have for the rest of my life, so the NHS, UK-based, are giving me consultant-led antenatal care, so I have loads of appointments. I cannot avoid them. They are for me and my baby's health. So 2 weeks ago at 1:30 a.m., Saturday morning, I have a bleed. I freak out. My partner is away that weekend, so I'm all alone. I call my care team. It's not a bright red bleed, so they tell me to keep an eye on it and call in the morning. I'm rhesus negative, so they want me to have a blood test and see if I need the shot. I don't sleep. I'm up all night making sure it doesn't go bright red, or if I need to go to A&E. In the morning, I go in with my mum and end up getting the shot. Hear my baby's heartbeat. I'm happy. But emotionally, I'm barely holding on. Monday rolls around. I send my boss an email to tell her what happened, just to let her know I'm working, but to be honest, I'm not 100%. That is the terminology I use. I work the full day, not hearing a peep from her. I log on the next day, and I've literally done all my work the day before. I work 2 days a week in this particular job, so I call my boss to ask her what she wants me to do, as I've completed all my tasks for the week. She tells me she doesn't think I'm fit to work. Didn't stop me yesterday, but okay, you're the boss. She asks me to get a fit note from my midwife. This is where I'm thinking, because in the UK you have to be off 7 days to be able to get a sick note. For 1 day it seems excessive. I say, okay though, and ask my midwife. She says she can't give one, that my GP has to. I pass this info on and ask for further clarification. I work the next Monday, no problem, but she is adamant she wants a fit note. So I call my doctors, I explain what has happened and what she wants. Doctor declares that he's signing me off work for the next 2 weeks and will then review. She wanted a fit note so bad it blew up in her face. No, I'm off on paid sick leave, and she could have just let me work. Serves her right. For those who may think she's concerned about my health, for the last few months, my work environment has been gradually becoming more and more hostile. A specific example is where she ripped me to pieces for not completing a piece of work that wasn't even due yet. I manage my workload based on due dates. It was not due for another week, and I had not been given any notice that the due date had changed. At this point, it has become a regular occurrence where I'm sitting at my computer crying. She may have been concerned for me, but I find that difficult to believe with how I've been treated the last few months. 5. I'm a screenwriter, and I work out of a co-working space in LA. When you're feeling stuck, it's nice to have other people around to chat with. So a couple weeks ago, I met this old guy who's making a late career push to become a screenwriter. He seemed kind of lonely, and maybe a little out of touch. He always likes to camp out in conference rooms without reserving them first. But I kind of like weird characters, so we struck up a conversation. He was friendly at first, but when he found out that I've got multiple films being packaged and several active writing contracts, he seemed sort of surprised. Like he didn't really believe someone my age could have so many irons in the fire. He even saw my college sweatshirt and even asked if I went to such a fancy school. I said I did. His reply was, "'Cause people make that stuff up all the time." And then he just looked at me, waiting for me to confess? When I didn't, he suggested maybe we could collaborate. I politely declined. Ever since then, he's been trying to take me down a few pegs. Every time I'm at the espresso machine, he comes up to me and asks me what I'm watching. This is how people in LA greet each other instead of, "How are ya?" It's something he's seen. He talks about how horrible it is or how played out the concept is. If it's something he hasn't seen, he pauses a few seconds and goes, "Have you ever seen?" and then mentions some X-rated cartoon. Yeah. Turns out this guy is a connoisseur of old-school animated smut. When I inevitably say no, I haven't seen this particular piece of porn, his eyes go all wide, and he does a big theatrical show of astonishment. "How is it possible you haven't seen it? It was a big underground hit in '73. For the record, I've seen all the great 20th century films from the Criterion Collection. This guy is talking about cartoon sex like it's Jean-Luc Godard. Which, maybe it is. But stop crawling up my ass just because I haven't wanked off to Down and Dirty Duck. So last week, after lambasting me yet again, he literally said, "Don't ever go on Jeopardy, kid." Seriously? He asks me if I've seen Fritz the Cat. Apparently it's about a cat who drops out of college to hang with inner-city African-American crows and ends up starting a race riot. There's a trailer. Don't look it up. It features an anthropomorphic foursome and words that polite people don't say. No, I haven't seen it, and this is evidently too much for him. "Don't talk to me until you've seen Fritz the Cat." Okay, you got it. No more of my politely enduring your rants until I've seen this crazy cartoon. A task which resides on my priority list somewhere below pouring scalding water on my balls. So every time it comes up to me, I put my hand up and go, "Sorry, we can't talk yet. Haven't seen Fritz the Cat." It's like an invincibility shield. Now I move through the kitchen like I'm Mark Grayson. And for the record, I'm not shitting on the guy for the things he likes, I just think it's a little crazy to judge people for not having the same esoteric tastes you do. And I get that some of you think Fritz the Cat is this super important underground film, which is cool. But it's not exactly canonical, is it? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 119. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then I'd appreciate it if you would share it about to all your friends and family. Also, if you're a fan of neckbeard videos, I did upload a new one yesterday. I'm kind of getting the feeling that a lot of people haven't been notified that it was uploaded, which seems to be the case. Certain videos, you always know they're going to do fairly well, even if other things aren't doing well. And the past two neckbeard videos haven't, so just letting you guys know if you haven't seen it, it is available to watch. Okay, now I'm going to keep things brief here because I think I need a nap, to be honest with you. It's just one of those days. Right, it's the 21st today, okay. Then I'll probably get to work on tomorrow's videos. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.